Last speaker this morning is Shani Higgins. She's the CEO of Technorati, who've been involved with the show for several years now. In fact, I think it was 2008 when Technorati and Blog Critics happened to have booths on the show floor across from each other, and after a couple of months of discussions, Technorati acquired Blog Critics. That was one of our first big exciting moments of business happening here at Blog World New Media Expo. They've been famous for the State of the Blogosphere report for many, many years. And like us, we've changed the focus by changing the name of the show to New Media Expo, understanding that podcasting, web TV, and these other forms of digital content are growing in the overall ecosystem of the new media world. They've changed the name of their report and kind of changed the focus of it to the Digital Influence Report. So Shani's going to bring us some real data this morning. And we were, again, talking about this backstage, about how brands are still spending their money in places where consumers aren't really looking, and how there's still a disconnect between where we as new media content creators are providing that access to the audience, and the brands still aren't getting that quite yet. And Shani's got some hard data for us this morning. So please welcome Shani Higgins to the stage. I'm not going to hug her because she's really sick, so please give her a warm welcome for being a trooper and coming on stage.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my first lesson in digital influence is product placement, Starbucks, and tissues, my new best friend. Anyway, I want to get started. For those of you who don't know me, and oh, I'm not going to get anything back here. Okay, it's going to be on either side. I'm here today to present to you a quick introduction of who Technorati Media is, as well as some key findings from our upcoming 2013 Digital Influence Report. And as Rick mentioned, we did change the name this year from State of the Blogosphere to Digital Influence, because as we've seen over the past few years, blogging is no longer an isolated event when we're talking about influence. Every blogger has a Twitter account, has a Tumblr account, has a Facebook account, and they're leveraging multiple platforms to sort of go out and influence and speak to their communities. So we wanted to have the report better represent the state of influence today. I'm going to give you a sneak peek because we're still in the midst of combing through all of the great data that we got out of the survey. And so I'm going to do some key highlights for you. But if you're interested in getting the report, it's going to be released February 1st, and it will encompass everything that we pulled together. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of insight of looking back and moving forward, what you can do with some of the data today that I'm going to go to and discuss with you. So let's get started. So the 2013 Digital Influence Report is pulled together through 3 disparate surveys. One went out to influencers, about 6,000. One went out to brands, and these are top brand marketers, both at agencies and clients direct. That was about 150 respondents. And then 1,200 consumers participated in our survey. So we're really rounding out the amount of information we are getting about influence from the 3 different perspectives. Again, the official release date is February 1st. If you're interested in getting the full report, sign up at technorati.com/report, and we'll send it out to you. So let me start with a little quick introduction before I go into the report about Technorati Media. For those of you that don't know us, Technorati has been around for over 10 years. We were founded in 2002 as a blog search, discovery, and ranking engine. Since then, we've become one of the largest social media ad networks, focused on bringing top brands together with influencers in meaningful ways. To give you a sense of our scale, last year we averaged, I think, about 120 million unique users a month on our network, and we paid out over $10 million to the publishing partners in our network for both advertising and influencer marketing initiatives. Now, why it's important for us to be here sharing with you this great data is because we believe that our relationships and our unique perspective in the social media value chain is important for us to be bringing that information to you so we can all help the business of influence prosper in 2013. So let's get started. I'm going to begin with influencer measurement and looking at how influencers themselves are monitoring influence. What metrics are they tracking the most? What metrics do they compare themselves to their peers the most? And which tools are most popular? So if you're not using them today, maybe you'll start using them tomorrow. If we begin with the top social media metrics monitored by influencers begin with page views on their website or their blog, but quickly are followed by their Facebook likes, the Twitter followers they've amassed, their Facebook comments, and their blog comments. And then you'll see things like their blog unique users that are coming to their website, and the number of retweets. And then there's more. But if we look at the least popular, which is also pretty interesting, you'll see that only 9% are paying attention to email shares. And as you all know, that is still one of the most popular ways in which information is shared online today, but it is not necessarily on top of influencers' minds. 4% goes to mayorships or check-ins. And this is another interesting stat. Tied at the very bottom was CredStats and ComScore Nielsen. What I'll show you later is that ComScore Nielsen is one of the critical ways in which brands determine where their spend is going to be allocated. And with influencers not being well represented in those scoring systems and also not paying attention to those scoring systems, we see where there's some disparity between where brands are spending and where influencers are making. When we look at the top comparison tools that influencers are using to check out how they're doing against their peers, we see Twitter followers come out on top. So they're comparing themselves around the number of Twitter followers they have versus the next expert has. They're looking at Facebook likes after that. Then they're looking at their blog website or page views, the number of Facebook friends they have, or even the website comments that they're seeing. When we look at the top tracking tools, by a landslide, Google Analytics comes in first. And then you'll see things like Facebook Insights, WordPress Stats, Clout Stats, Alexa Rank, Hootsuite, TweetDeck, StatCounter. Others that kind of fell after that were CMOZ, SiteMeter, and some others. Oh, I think there was a Pinterest stat tool too. When we look at brands and we check out what they're doing within the influence category, we wanted to find out how are they measuring success in their influencer marketing initiatives? How are they comparing and selecting the influencers they choose to work with and choose to pay? And what metrics are most important that they're also looking at when they're evaluating their own earned media initiatives? So to start with, the campaign success metrics that most brands are using in social start with reach. 88% of what they're looking at is what is the potential number of people that saw my initiative. Then they're looking at things like Facebook shares and likes to understand what kind of engagement did they get from their influencer marketing campaigns. What type of traffic did they get to their landing pages or their website to kind of express the intent that a consumer might have after seeing some of the content. And then looking at the number of links that they've gotten to their content, followed by the number of comments and the interactivity that they've created, as well, and lastly, by sentiment. So how positive was the connection that they were making? Now, this is where the biggest flaw is in the whole influence ecosystem. When reach is the most important factor that a brand is looking to determine success around an initiative, we all know that influence is greatest in your smallest communities. And so in order for reach to be attained, you've got to go to your largest communities in order to get to a sizable reach number. And you lose some of the value and benefits of being in the smaller sites, the ones where the greatest influence occurs. If we look at the top influencer metrics for brands, this is what brands are looking at to determine what influencers to go reach out to involve in their campaigns, and to eventually pay. You'll see the most important stat was the ComScore Nielsen stat. How does the audience index of this influencer? And where this is really a shame is that ComScore and Nielsen do a terrible job of helping the small influencer because they don't really care about sites that are this tiny. Their panel data and some of the ways in which their technology works does not give visibility into these smaller communities. And so what you have is just the big sites winning sort of the value and the mindset of brands. Following that are Twitter followers, Facebook friends, Facebook likes, and then looking at the total uniques that might be going to an influencer site. When we look at the top earned media goals for brands, you'll see that Facebook likes, followed by website traffic, then Facebook friends, followers, page views, tweets, and comments all came next. I don't know if that got jumbled like it did on my screen. Sorry about that. But what you will see here is that Facebook likes were more important than web traffic, and that does differ from the slide I showed you earlier about what influencers are paying attention to, where they would hold their website traffic above things like Facebook likes. When we look at revenue trends for influencers, you'll see we asked questions around what types of programs are influencers partaking in? Where is their influencer revenue actually coming from? And what's the average revenue that an influencer is making per type of program? So let's take a look. Oh, these are all coming out a little botched. Okay, we'll work with it anyway. All right, so influencer campaign types. Contest or product giveaways was #1 at 55%. Sponsored posts or articles were at 49%. Brand ambassador programs were at 24%. Sponsored tweets at 23%. Sponsored Facebook posts at 22%. Taking part in a focus group was around 16%. And generating an image or a photograph and posting that or pinning that was about 15%. And this is based on popularity. When we asked influencers where was their revenue coming from, 60% said banners, 49% said text ads, 45% said affiliate links. Sponsored content was about 23%. Branded content was 19%. And the disparity between those two, sponsored content, think of it as an influencer is being paid to write an article around a subject matter usually very complementary to the brand, whereas branded content is they're taking a press release and posting it and modifying it mildly. Sponsored product reviews, e-commerce actually has been moving up 17%, and then subscription fees was about 6%. When we look at the revenue trends for influencers, and this is the depressing stat that I have to share with you all today, 55% of influencers are making less than $1,000 a year. Not enough to hang your hat on or buy that many of these. We'll see that around 9% are earning about $30,000 or more. So we're getting into a more, more acceptable level of income. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, part of the problem is, at least for blogs specifically, is that there is no centralized platform. There is no centralized metrics associated with all the different blogs. The beauty of blogs is their fragmentation and their ability to go very niche and very influential. The problem with that is it's very difficult for brands to buy that way. They don't have time to go and figure out who they should be on and tracking who they are on and what's working and what's not. They want simplification and they want aggregation because ultimately they've got to compare it to some of their traditional buying techniques, which always involve reach. So let's talk about brand spending because we asked brands and we wanted to find out where things were going and where things have been. So we asked brands to predict what their increases in spends were going to be in 2013, and then we dove deeply into where their spend had been in 2012. To begin with, 79% of brands expected their spends to increase in mobile in 2013. And tying in second place, 59% believed that their spend would increase in both social and in video. What was interesting is that we polled the brands even more in the social spending category, which is where a lot of blogs and influencer marketing falls into. And they predicted on average a 40% increase in spend in 2013 around social spending. Really good news. Until we look at where that money goes. So in 2012, we asked them how their social spend was split. And you'll see the predominant amount of social spend went into your top private platforms. Things like Facebook, 58% of their spend, and this would include paid advertising on Facebook, so your sponsored stories, as well as any of their initiatives for their brand page on Facebook, the content they're pushing through that brand channel, or anything else associated with that. Followed by 13% on YouTube, 12% on Twitter, 6% going to influencer marketing, and 5% going to blogs. As you can see here, only 5% going to advertising on blogs. When consumers go to blogs for influence more than they would Twitter, and when they go to blogs more for changing opinion about a purchase intent than they do for something like Facebook. So looking at pockets of influence, we asked influencers where they felt they were strongest in influence, and then we countered that with where consumers were getting most influenced based on what they were sharing the most, what platforms they were sharing the most from. So if you look from an influencer's perspective, 47% believe they were most influential on Facebook. 32%, and I should mention this is all after their blog, so the blog isn't included in these stats. Twitter is about 32%, LinkedIn about 7%, Google Plus 5%, YouTube 3%, Pinterest 2%, and Tumblr 1%. When we asked consumers what they were sharing from the most, you'll see that Facebook came out on top. So they are influenced by Facebook. 57% of what they share comes from Facebook, 40% comes from YouTube, 26% comes from blogs. And that is indicated here by WordPress, but obviously there are plenty more blogging systems than just that. It is tied with traditional news, which is represented here by the New York Times. And then Google Plus came in around 25%, Twitter only at 18%, groups and forums that they belong to about 16%, and retail websites, demonstrated here by Amazon's logo, at around 13%. When we look at the changing landscape of influence, we wanted to know what some of the lucrative ways influencers are actually making money, and how do influencers actually source these opportunities. To begin with, the most lucrative ways for influencers to generate revenue came from creating custom video. On our report, we saw that on average, they make about $611 per instance of a custom video that they've created for a brand. When we talk about brand ambassadorships and participating in them, influencers were making somewhere around $495 on average, taking part in brand ambassadorships. Focus groups was about $170, a little under that, and coupon giveaways, for instance, was about $160. When we look at how influencers find opportunities, they're not finding them, they're being found. And the majority of the time, it's the PR agencies, 34% of the time, finding them. Why? Because PR agencies are tasked with going out and monitoring the wild web and finding out who's talking about their brand, who's talking about their product or their product category, or the interests that are really appropriate for the target market that a brand is trying to reach. Next, they're finding these opportunities on Facebook and Twitter. So they're following brands in these environments. And when brands are putting out opportunities for an influencer to partake in it, this is where they're finding them. They're also doing it from their Contact Me page on their website or their own sales team. They're using networks and agents to help them in sourcing the right opportunities, or going to conferences like this one and finding out who needs what. They're also looking in the press to do it. Okay, I got the 5-minute warning. All right, so I'm going to move fast on this. I only have 3 slides to go. So the business of influence evolves. Then in 2011, the last time we presented this report was at the last Blog World Expo, or the old NMX. And that was down in LA. When we presented the information, we saw that influencers are educated, they're affluent, 2/3 are following and blogging about brands pretty regularly. Consumers' trust levels for blogs are higher than most other social media. Brand and influencers are interacting at unprecedented levels, but there's a ton of inefficiency in when they're working together. Now we're seeing that influencers are still educated, they're still affluent, they're following and writing about brands. Consumers are still highly influenced by blogs, both from a purchase intent as well as a recommendation and sharing perspective. Brands and influencers, between them, key social metrics brands are using are not the same as the ones that influencers are paying attention to. And they are also not well supported in the marketplace. As I mentioned, Comscore and Nielsen are not great measurement tools for bloggers. And the money isn't necessarily following the areas of greatest influence. Now this is something, and I'll sort of sneak a little information out to you guys, that we are focused on as a company. So one of the cool things you'll see in 2013 is Technorati.com will not be what it is today. We are relaunching the site to address some of these big inefficiencies we see in this business of influence. So some key trends that we saw in the data. Measurement is key. Increasingly sophisticated approaches by both influencers and brands in measuring overall performance across all categories of the different digital initiatives they have within social. Effectiveness is expected. Brands are under an immense amount of scrutiny, and they are trying to combine their efforts in social with what they're doing in other digital arenas, as well as what they're doing offline. So they're really trying to use the same metrics that they're applying to non-traditional ways, to these, to blogs and to their social media efforts. Reporting is a necessity. The ability to track and measure results needs strengthening for both brands and influencers. There's still too much of a fragmentation disparity between reporting systems. So how do you grow your influence? How do you grow the value of your influence? How do you make more? Well, there's 2 different areas. There's the advertising area and there's the influencer marketing area. So let's talk about advertising first. We know from consumers in this report that ads are more helpful on blogs than they are on Facebook and Twitter. And yet, you really need to have an integrated campaign for brands. So always be thinking about all the platforms that you've got influence on that you can leverage when working with brands and really offering them the best of what you have. Less is more when it comes to ads. One of the things that is tried and true in the world of advertising online is that metrics are available. The first thing that a brand will optimize against is a site that is not performing well. Sites that have too many ads or really crappy ads with respect to the size or the positioning or placement will not keep the money that they're making within a buy. They will be cut quickly and they will not be renewed. So if you want to collect great advertising revenue from your blog, make sure you have a few ads and make sure that they are really impactful, because your performance will determine your value. Don't settle for AdSense. Again, work with a network who understands your needs, who understands your unique value proposition, so they can best represent that out in the marketplace. They're there for a reason, because alone you don't have the visibility at the agency level, but together with other influencers like you can be a very viable solution for their marketing spend. Do invest in video reviews, demos, and commentary. They're in high demand. Video CPMs are almost 3x in many cases what a traditional content CPM would be. So if you can, invest in that medium. Create a mobile version of your blog site and optimize for the ads and the content. This is really important. Over 30% of consumers are accessing content online through their mobile devices, and these are not set up to understand traditional web display. So optimize for that environment. It will improve your effectiveness from both a sharing as well as an advertising perspective. And last, grow the value of your influence from an influencer marketing perspective. Think native. Think about the different platforms you're on and the best way to send messages, especially for brands that you're getting paid to do, across those different channels, even if the brand doesn't ask for them. It's something that will be evaluated at the end of the campaign, so you might as well put your best foot forward. Gain insights into your audience and transparently share the information with brands. Do your own little marketing studies on your customers to find out what they like and who they are, so you can better serve them, both from a content as well as an advertising perspective. Package and promote your influence to brands in measurable ways. Think about the number of tweets you do. Think about the number of Facebook posts or pins that you do, and let them know what you're going to do. Vet expectations on influencer marketing programs at the start. So what this means is a lot is determined not necessarily at the beginning, but as you go through it, and a lot of headache ensues where you thought the brand wanted one thing and they thought you understood they wanted something else. Ask up front so that you're all on the same page and you can eliminate some of the inefficiencies we see in influencer marketing today. Follow the brands you like on Facebook and Twitter. It's where a lot of your peers are getting the opportunities for influencer marketing initiatives. Sign up with a network that can help bring better, relevant sponsor opportunities to you. And last but not least, I shouldn't have to say this, but stay authentic. At the end of the day, a brand can offer you a lot of money to really lose your authenticity and possibly risk your trust with your audience. It's not worth it. In the end, it's your audience that stays with you all the way through. Campaigns come and go. And that's it. So I want to thank everyone for your time and let you know that there are some follow-ups you can do. For registering for the report, again, technorati.com/report. If you want to join our ad network, that would be technoratimedia.com/publishers. You can sign up for our influencer campaigns. That's at technoratimedia.com/influencers. And we've got Scott Lyon here who'll be around at the conference. You can also talk to about those. And then you're always welcome to contact me. My information is there if you want a copy of this, deck, or you have some ideas, or you just want to share some information. I'm listening and open to hearing everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shani. Great information. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a couple quick questions. I know we're running late. I'll get you guys out of here right now. So I saw Tamsin and several other people tweeting about the stat, how brands are spending their money on Facebook, or they're using that as their #1 measurement, likes on Facebook versus on blogs. Are they spending their money in the wrong place?
I think so.
All right.
Without a doubt.
And a lot of people were surprised that only 12% of blogs were actually making a living. I'm not surprised by that at all. How many blogs do you guys track now?
Oh my God, millions. But
tens of millions, hundreds of millions?
No, it's less than 10 million.
Okay.
Because they come and go, and we've got to keep it sort of focused on those that are actually doing it more than just a hobby. Yeah.
But that means if it's 10% or 12% of blogs that are actually making a living, I mean, it's in the millions of people who are actually making money, making a living blogging.
No, I would say it's more in the hundreds of thousands, if that. You have a huge curve disparity. It's really going to be those that have significant traffic and significant audiences that are getting the majority of the spends. And that is a small few in the blogging arena. And that shouldn't be that way because, again, as I mentioned, influence is greatest in the smaller communities. So it's those smaller communities that should be making a lot of money.
So I use the analogy all the time. Blogs are like music. Most people who play guitar or any instrument suck. They're never going to make money. It's the same way with any kind of content. So I wouldn't be shocked by that number.
No.
Anyway, I know we're running late. The other sessions are going to start just a little bit late, so you guys run to your next session. Thank you so much again to Shani, to Amy Jo, to Stan Slap. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.